And a good Wednesday to you, Central Georgia. Thanks for tuning in here for a look at your extended forecast. Not much to talk about weather-wise still. Obviously, we're kind of heading into this consistent stretch of weather. I guess there is a little bit to talk about in the aspect that each and every day is going to be pretty similar, but we are going to have some talking points throughout the end of the work week in terms of some changes to your forecast. Last 2 days, we haven't really had anything in the way of rain that has popped up, maybe a singular shower or two. But I haven't gotten a glimpse of anything. It has been just a story of some above average afternoons, but still feeling pretty pleasantly warm and pretty close to average. We'll go over some of the numbers we saw yesterday, talk about what's ahead, and especially for your Memorial Day weekend as you try to plan out some of those outdoor plans that I'm sure many of you will have as we go into Friday, Saturday, Sunday, maybe even all the way into Monday. So pop-up rain is going to begin to be possible each and every day, starting this afternoon, going all the way into the weekend, through the weekend, and into the beginning of next week. In fact, this pattern should stay put for quite a while. It could stay put until we get all the way into the end of the month of May, and it is going to be a bit of a taste of summer in the aspect that we are going to have high temperatures hovering pretty close to 90. We're going to have rain chances each and every day, but it does look like the coverage of rain is going to be a bit more widespread than what we would see on a typical summertime day, where we're talking about maybe a 20 to 30% chance of a pop-up shower or a storm. So here's a look around the quad, a few clouds in the sky, but overall a forecast dominated by some sunshine once again, and we continue to look down here at the Georgia National Fairgrounds. That's kind of our telltale time frame or a camera frame where we can get a glimpse of what direction the winds are blowing from. Don't know if it's working right now. It actually appears that it is frozen in nature. I do imagine that the winds are blowing just a little bit. However, we are not seeing the cars move over there on I-75, and I imagine that's not the case. There's probably no one on I-75. There we go. It looks like we got a corrected view, but it does look like a very, very light breeze, if anything. Overall, it is going to be pretty similar to what we saw yesterday, but just not as many clouds that are in the picture. But we're starting to see some of those poofy cotton balls bubble up, and that's going to be in downtown Dublin, looking back over to the west. Current temperatures, once again, a dividing line where you can see where our frontal boundary does sit, and that's going to be across areas as far north as up in Ohio, getting into the Great Lakes portion of the country, all the way through the Mississippi River Valley, Missouri Valley area, and well down into Texas. So areas like Dallas and San Angelo, they are sitting behind the frontal boundary, but areas like Houston and getting down into Laredo, a little bit warmer, they're going to be on the front side of that frontal boundary. Just like the rest of us here in the east and the southeast United States, 82 here in Macon. We see a cluster of some 80s down in the southeast corner of the United States. 84 in Virginia Beach. How about an 86 in Washington, D.C., taking the cake for the warmest number that we can spot. Otherwise, it's a whole lot of green behind the frontal boundary. Scattered 50s, even a 49 all the way up there in Denver. So taking a more localized view, it does appear that all these 80s that we do see, it's going to be in these areas of the country where we are the farthest away from where the frontal boundary is currently located. Low 80s, some mid 80s, already 84 degrees up in Atlanta, matching the number down in Jacksonville. And it does appear that 84 is probably the warmest number down here. Montgomery sitting at 84, and actually 170 that we can spot all the way up there in Myrtle Beach. Current temperatures in central Georgia itself, a few areas are still holding on to the upper 70s. Most areas have already made the climb into the low 80s. So a little bit warmer than we have been at this time of the past couple of days, but we're not looking at this drastic warm up to continue as we go into the afternoon. I think our warm up is going to kind of level and steady off as we head into lunchtime and just past lunchtime into 1, 2, and 3 o'clock. Here's a look at your winds and your wind gusts. Not too breezy like we were just mentioning, anywhere from a 3 to 5 mile per hour breeze at the most, but I think your winds are going to be pretty calm throughout most of your Wednesday afternoon. Not going to be occasionally gusty like the southeasterly breeze we have seen lately. Take a look at your humidity levels. There are patchy areas of dark green, some really, really dark green over to the east of Macon, southwest, and closer over to the Columbus area. But most of central Georgia is still holding on to a decent amount of moisture. Definitely not as much as we do see over here to the west, but note how widespread those dark green patches are over to the west into Mississippi. All of this moisture is forecast to slide over to the east as we go throughout the next couple of days, and we are going to have kind of a battleground for dew point temperatures in the 60s and the 70s. But right now, it's a story of dew point temperatures mainly in the 70s and plenty of widespread dark green. That is going to be enough surface moisture to work with in order for some pop-up rain chances later on today. But I think these patchy areas of some super dark green, like the 74-degree dew point you see in Americus, and over here to the west of us and areas just north of the Columbus area, those are going to slide a little bit farther over to the east, but it also is enhancing our feels like temperatures. Take a look at this. Feels like 90 already down in Unadilla. Feels like the upper 80s in our westernmost counties and up to the northwest, 89 in Forsyth, 88 in Monticello. And most areas are feeling pretty close to where their actual temperature does sit, but I'm seeing a lot of feels like temperatures that are in the upper half of the 80s, maybe even closer to that 90-degree mark. So already off to a very warm start today, and those numbers are going to continue to climb as we head into the afternoon. Here's a look at your satellite and radar picture where we're not really getting a glimpse of much in the way of cloud cover. There are a few clouds that do sit over to the west, but all these clouds back over in Alabama, those are expected to creep closer and closer as the front does continue to push down to the south and the southeast. Can spot some rain in the very top left of your screen. That's going to be back over into western Tennessee and getting into northern Mississippi. But the state of Georgia still kind of remains pretty quiet here in our neck of the woods. Let's talk about some numbers. 88 was your high temperature yesterday for the second day in a row, but it was a little bit closer to your average high temperature of 87. That did get a bump up from what we did see on Monday afternoon. 58 for a morning low, right around where we should be, just a couple degrees below that average low temperature of 61 degrees. 98, the record high temperature rather, I should say, for yesterday all time back in 1965. 45, 1976 is when we saw that record low temperature. And no rain, that puts the year departure back kind of getting into closer to around 5 inches once again, but 4.5 inches roughly below where we should be at this point of the year. Sunrise 6:33 yesterday morning and sunset was at 8:29 p.m. yesterday evening. But yesterday, like we mentioned, it was still technically above average, even though your average high temperature is crawling closer and closer to the 90-degree mark. So 87, 91, and then 88 and 88 back-to-back days. That marks 4 days in a row that we've had above average high temperatures as we've now officially transitioned into the second half of the month of May. In the last 4 days, we have seen double the amount of above average days that we did see in the entire first half of the month of May. So your tally is now up to 6 days that are above average, but still over double the amount of below average days that we did see with all those highs in the 70s and the lower half of the 80s. I do anticipate today to make that tally 5 days in a row that we will have above average high temperatures. As taking a look at your meteogram, like we were just talking about, your warm-up kind of steadies off and it plateaus as we go into the afternoon. We will make the climb into the mid-80s, and I think a big reason for this is, number one, we're going to start to see cloud cover bubble up, and that's going to block some of our sunshine as we go into the afternoon. But we also could be looking at some scattered rain chances like we were talking about with that increase in moisture. Are going to come some pop-up rain chances, and even if we just have something in the way of a light shower, it is going to knock the temperatures down maybe just about a degree or two. And associated with that light shower is, of course, going to be some cloud cover that will block your sunshine. So 90 for a high temperature. I elected for a bit of a downtick in your high temperatures because a lot of the models have been calling for 91s, 92s, maybe even 93s over the next couple of days. And we've just fallen a little bit shy of that the last couple of days, somewhere in the upper 80s. Staying warm, and with the possibility of rain, that's another reason why I went with the downtick. We're very likely not going to hit our high temperature if we do catch something in the way of rain. But your rain chances are going to be the best towards the west and the northwest throughout the rest of today, which we'll talk a little bit more about once we get to the surface map. In terms of what the feels like numbers are going to be, yes, we might not necessarily crawl into the 90s for your actual temperatures, but it is going to feel like the low 90s, pretty similar to how yesterday afternoon felt. And then as we go into the evening hours, we're still going to feel like somewhere in the 80s until finally we get to around 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock, and the numbers dip below the 80-degree mark, and then they're starting to feel a lot truer to what they actually read. So here's a look at that surface map, and there's the frontal boundary that I was referring to that's sending some showers up here into areas of western Tennessee and northern Mississippi, but more widespread up across areas like Illinois, Kentucky, Indiana, and back into Ohio, West Virginia, and western Pennsylvania. So this front will continue to push in the direction that these blue triangles are pointed at right now. It will continue to steadily inch towards the state of Georgia, but don't expect it to come passing through. I think it's going to inch through the Tennessee Valley area, creep closer into northern Alabama, portions of Mississippi, but it's going to be right on the doorstep of the state of Georgia, and then it's going to park itself. So by doing that, it is going to continue to keep our atmosphere nice and warm and nice and humid. But also there is going to be a good amount of forcing in the general area just out ahead of this frontal boundary. So the closer that you are to the frontal boundary itself, the better chance that you are going to have of some pop-up rain. Remember how much moisture is present over here in Mississippi? Well, as the front continues to push down to the south and the southeast, it is pushing all of that moisture further over to the east, across Alabama, across into Georgia, and that is going to set up a more humid atmosphere that will lead to some more widespread rain chances. But today, it looks like only areas over to the west and the northwest in central Georgia that are a little bit closer to that axis of forcing, that frontal boundary itself, that's where your rain chances are going to be best. So this is around the 4 o'clock hour. Rain is going to come in the form of scattered showers and a couple of storms. Don't be surprised if you hear a few rumbles of thunder throughout today. I don't have really much confidence in anything in the way of severe weather, but of course this time of the year you can't rule out maybe an isolated strong or maybe even possibly severe thunderstorm warning, but that's only going to impact a select few areas if that is to occur. But today it doesn't look like we quite have the best forcing behind that. Maybe the potential for some stronger weather. However, we'll always continue to keep you posted each and every afternoon. Now we go into the evening hours, and I want you to pay attention. This 8 o'clock hour, just about each and every day, that's going to kind of be an important time because that's creeping closer and closer to when sunset is. Remember what we just talked about, sunset going to be around 8:29, 8:30 into the evening. Well, once the sun sets, that is going to be a big driver of all that surface heating. Without the solar radiation that we receive throughout the afternoon hours when the sun's at its highest point in the sky, that is going to result in the temperatures beginning to cool down. And that is going to mean that we are going to lose one of the mechanisms that is going to force the destabilization, which causes these pop-up showers and storms into the afternoon time frame. So we are going to see all the rain that is remaining really lose its intensity and try to fizzle out. Now, of course, you are going to see more widespread rain up to the northwest in the top left of your screen behind the banner. That's because those areas are still having the frontal boundary that is driving that lifting with it. So we don't have that necessarily here in central Georgia. We're just talking about kind of that convective, that pop-up activity. The frontal boundary is going to be what continues to contribute to the clusters of showers and maybe even some storms being widespread into the overnight hours over all the way into tomorrow morning up into northern Alabama. So it does appear that we might have some clouds in the forecast as we walk out the door tomorrow. I would expect more cloud cover than what we've seen over the last 3 days. I mean, it's been absolutely crystal clear. It's been a gorgeous, gorgeous start Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday mornings. But we are going to also have that humidity that will lead to some temperatures in the upper half of the 60s and the low 70s as you walk outside for your morning lows. Perfect t-shirt and shorts weather, but that means we are getting a bit of a head start for how much we are going to warm up into the afternoon. So we are going to have some pretty warm numbers. And then, just like clockwork, just like we see as of this afternoon, pop-up showers and a couple of storms. They are beginning to crowd the picture in a select few areas. They're still of the pretty scattered nature, which means there are going to be areas that are not catching rain each and every afternoon here in central Georgia. This is around the 3 p.m. hour. I think the later into the afternoon that you progress, that's where you're going to more so have some pockets of some heavier rainfall, some heavier downpours that could indicate maybe some flashes of lightning, maybe something in the way of a stronger thunderstorm potentially. But like I said, only going to be present in a select few areas. This one, according to this model run, which is very likely not going to actually play out, across Putnam County into Hancock County. And then you see the rest of central Georgia just really dealing with maybe a couple isolated showers, not looking like widespread rain whatsoever as we go into those evening hours on Thursday. And then you can see that some rain is trying to hang around all the way into the midnight hour. We can see some showers hanging in the picture even into the late night hours with this convective process because some areas are going to run over those areas that didn't receive rainfall throughout the day, and they're going to have a little bit more fuel to the fire. Obviously, when you have a shower going over an area, it's using up all those ingredients that are in place, the warm air and all the surface heating and all the moisture. Well, when you do get a shower that runs over those areas, it's going to use up that destabilization in the atmosphere. If you have areas that have had nothing but sunshine all day, they're going to continue to remain destabilized, and that might be enough for maybe a shower or a pocket of some steadier rain to work with, but I don't think anything in the way of stronger to severe weather is going to be likely as we go into that overnight time frame and all the way into the next morning. So Friday morning, pretty similar start to what we saw on Thursday, maybe a few more clouds. I would expect some clouds to hang around, but there should be some gaps in the cloud cover to hopefully give us some peaks of sunshine as we walk out the door both Thursday and Friday mornings. Then we go into the afternoon. Stop me if you've heard this before. You probably start to know the drill by now. Scattered showers, a couple pockets of some heavier rain and some storms that will bubble up just past lunchtime. So that's what time you need to go ahead and be prepared for each and every day. Once we get past lunchtime, your temperatures are kind of reaching that plateau that we were talking about on the meteogram. That's when your warmer temperatures are going to be present, and that's where you kind of have been warming up all morning long, kind of preheating the oven, if you will, and then the oven is going to reach that max temperature as we go into the afternoon, and that's what's going to start to lift the cake. A little bit of a baking analogy for you right there. So then we go into the evening hours, still clusters of some thunderstorms that are lasting, but again, that 8 p.m. hour, that's going to be a telltale time for when activity should be fizzling out. But according to this model run, it's showing that thunderstorms just continue to bubble up as we go into the nighttime hours and overnight Friday into early Saturday morning. I'm not buying too much stock into that. I think if anything is to occur in the way of thunderstorms, it's still going to be that afternoon to evening time frame. And typically with this type of convective, this pop-up activity, Future View and all the other model runs don't do the best job. They kind of forget they're just general rules of meteorology. So that's where we have to come in as broadcast meteorologists and kind of use our common sense with that. Okay, it's going to be nighttime. What's the likelihood of cooler temperatures sprouting some widespread thunderstorms without a lifting mechanism, without that frontal boundary, because this is just operating off the heat of the day? Typically, you cannot see an overnight severe weather risk unless you have some kind of forcing mechanism via a frontal boundary, which we always talk about. So let's talk about the rainfall totals that we will see. First and foremost, what you are noticing throughout the rest of today, like I mentioned, west and northwest central Georgia, you guys are going to have the best likelihood of seeing some rain. So if you live down in Dublin, Eastman, and Soperton, very likely not going to catch any rain throughout today. Is it impossible for you to catch a stray shower or two? No, it definitely isn't. But we are looking at those areas that are closer to where the more widespread rain is being dumped back over into East Alabama, northwestern Georgia. That is going to creep into the northwestern corner of our viewing area. So there's less of a likelihood. I would put the rain chance at, if I had to give it a percentage, probably about a 3 or 4% chance down here in southeast central Georgia, but it's definitely not impossible. Then as we go into tomorrow, that frontal boundary will have inched a little bit closer. It's pushing a little bit more moisture into our neck of the woods. So the rain chances are going to pop up at random. That could be anywhere in central Georgia, but it's not going to be everywhere. Really want to emphasize that message. Your rain chances being scattered in nature does mean that there will be areas that dodge the rain each and every afternoon. And that is going to be a possibility all the way through your weekend and into the beginning of next week. So while the rain chances may seem widespread, according to what Future View does say, there will still be some areas that dodge the rain each and every afternoon. So I want to emphasize this. Do not cancel any plans that you do have for the upcoming weekend. This is very reminiscent of a summertime forecast, and the fact these rain chances are scattered or hit or miss. That's probably a better adjective to use to describe them. There will be moments where it's raining throughout this weekend. There will be moments where it's going to be dry, but for the most part, I would bank on more time being dry as opposed to being wet over the course of one select area over the course of the next couple of days. So as we go all the way through Thursday, I did just want to emphasize that other areas that didn't necessarily see the rain throughout this afternoon and evening, they have a better chance at catching some rain in the form of a shower or a thunderstorm as we go into that afternoon and evening. And then if we go according to plan what Friday has, obviously remember that cluster of some thunderstorms that was popping up during the late night hours going overnight into the early morning on Saturday. Well, it looks like Hancock County is the luckiest of the bunch, 3.8 inches of rain. This is very likely not going to happen, but I did want to emphasize that some areas that do see more widespread clusters of some thunderstorms, or they see just something in the way of general heavier rain, and that's obviously going to come with some flashes of lightning, very likely some gusty winds. You are going to have some isolated pockets where you will have some higher rainfall totals, but that's not going to be widespread. So even with all of this rain, for the most part, I'm expecting your totals of rain to be under the inch mark. Some areas might get an inch to 2, maybe even 3 inches of rain if you are lucky, but that's going to come at the trade-off of receiving something in the way of a thunderstorm without having widespread totals like you do see up here in Sparta. we are very likely not looking at much improvement when it does come to our drought monitor, like we did see with the widespread rainmaker, say about 2 weeks ago. And that one did send us some pretty widespread rainfall totals of about 1 inch, 2, maybe even up to 3, 4. We saw some areas of Taylor County, even over to Columbus, that had 5 inches of rain over the course of 24 hours. That's obviously what you do need. And remember, that didn't really improve our drought monitor much whatsoever. So I'm not anticipating any widespread improvement with our drought monitor from this rain. But that's just over the next 3 days. The promising thing is we will continue these rain chances past the end of the work week. In terms of your high temperatures, those aren't going to change. Like I mentioned, I've elected for a bit of a bump down because, number one, we haven't been reaching that high temperature over the last couple of days, and we haven't really had anything stopping us as we've headed into the afternoon. This time we do. We are going to have these pop-up clouds and these pop-up showers and storms each and every day, where the rain chances are increasing every day from today all the way into your Friday. So this is what I mean by the coverage is going to be a little bit more widely scattered than what we do see on a typical summertime day. 40% chance of a shower, that's kind of getting up there into 50-50 territory, but I elected for a 40% because, number one, yes, the coverage is going to be pretty good throughout the afternoon and evening, but I did want to emphasize the fact that there is still a greater chance of you not receiving rainfall as opposed to receiving rain, but it's getting really close. It's starting to flirt with that fine line in between receiving rain and not. Well, obviously, once we start to talk about 50, 60, 70% chances of rain, that's a more widespread rainmaker, but these are going to be pretty widely scattered as we go into Friday afternoon and evening. And again, I think Friday is the best likelihood of you catching some rain out of each of the next 3 days, and we are going to continue that as we go into the weekend. But it also is a busy end of the work week in between graduations and many people just getting ready to head out of town, kind of that first trip that you can take for the summer vacation. The last couple of days of school are right now. So what do you need to know as you head out on the roads? Well, I would anticipate increased traffic each of the next 4 days with some pretty heavy traffic throughout Thursday and Friday. This isn't even taking into account the fact that many people are going to be going on the interstate to make their way down to the Georgia National Fairgrounds tomorrow and Friday for Houston County graduations. We have Bibb County graduations today, and I think they wrap up tomorrow as well. So the combination of all of those factors, just on top of the sheer volume of people getting ready to head out on the interstate and make their way out of town, maybe going down to the beach, maybe going up to the mountains, whatever it may be, there is going to be heavier traffic and expected in the second half of the day, specifically Thursday and Friday. Traffic will take a bit of a downtick on Saturday, but maybe there's some people that couldn't get off of work early enough on Friday and they just want to get a good night's rest before hitting the road early on Saturday. So expect some increased traffic as we go into Saturday afternoon. Sunday should be the one day that's going to be the key day to travel. It looks like that's going to be the lightest of traffic because many people are going to have Monday off of work, so they are going to be staying at their destination wherever they are. And of course, it's just a general Sunday. We typically don't see as many people on the roads throughout Sunday unless we are talking about the metro Atlanta area. But that's also another note, that 285 road closure that did start as of last weekend in the Atlanta area, that is going to be postponed. They are not going to do that this weekend because of the Memorial Day travel, and very thankfully so. That just sounds like a recipe for disaster if they were to continue to keep 285 closed through Memorial Day weekend. But then on Monday and Tuesday, expect an uptick in traffic once again. The guidance from the GDOT website has light traffic on Monday, but that just doesn't make sense to me. And I always say this when we talk about the GDOT website travel forecast. Typically, they have that Monday after an extended weekend or the holiday itself. That is going to be a low traffic day, but I'm just not buying it because many people are very likely going to be heading back into town on Memorial Day itself. But maybe some people are taking that extra PTO day after Memorial Day on Monday and adding it on for a long weekend vacation. So expect increased traffic in the second half of each and every day. The earlier, the better to hit the roads. But Thursday and Friday, it is definitely going to be quite messy. So I would go ahead and budget for a couple extra minutes for some of that traffic in between graduation and in between those Memorial Day travelers. In terms of the humidity, the moisture content that we were talking about, again, your dew point temperatures still hovering a little bit above this line graph that we do have. And take a look at where it does sit now. This has actually gotten an uptick from what we did see yesterday, indicating that we are going to probably see the dew point temperatures hover more so in the low 70s day by day. There's a little bit of fluctuation, but there's not a drastic drop down or a drastic increase upward. it does appear that we are really just going to keep kind of the on and off moisture content. There are going to be muggy periods, there's going to be less muggy periods, but we are going to have plenty of water that is in the air down at the surface that will contribute to those pop-up rain chances, especially as long as your high temperatures hover near 90, maybe just somewhere right there above average in the upper 80s. Not as far above average as we were first anticipating, but again, it's a fairly uniform stretch when it does come to your temperatures. And also these temperatures that are going to be in the upper 80s near 90 degrees. A good reminder, like I have been doing. I actually took my own advice yesterday. I waited until around 6:30, around 7 o'clock in the evening to take Aspen for a walk. Just when the sun was a little bit lower, you had lots of shade from the trees, and those hot surfaces had begun to cool down. So early in the morning, late in the evening, the best time to take those furry friends on a walk. Keep them off the concrete and the asphalt as much as you can, especially in the middle of the day. Once you head into the evening hours, those temperatures will begin to cool down, and it will be a lot better of an environment to take them out and about, but try to keep them in the grass as much as possible during this time of year. Morning low temperatures, mid and upper 60s, hovering a couple degrees above average, just like your afternoon highs, but I think we're a little bit more above average in terms of your morning lows. Pretty pleasant feel, and we might have some days that we don't even get down this far as low as what the temperatures do say. It's all going to be dependent on the moisture content, what those dew point temperatures are. And like I mentioned, there's no real end in sight to this pattern. Pop-up rain chances are going to be possible as we go into Saturday afternoon and evening, going all the way into Sunday afternoon and evening, and then we go all the way into Memorial Day itself. We're not seeing any of these blue and green shades. Number one, not really having too much organization, but they are bubbling up, popping up, and then dissipating and going away as we go into the morning hours each and every day. Tuesday, it does look like we might start to see some signs of a pattern change. We need a dry slot of air to really come in order to inhibit our rain chances, but it does look like a pretty good likelihood of rain chances each and every day. So just because you don't catch rain today, you don't catch rain tomorrow, or you don't even catch it on Friday when we have the best chance of each of the next 3 days, not to worry. You still have a decent chance of catching some showers or even something more substantial in the way of rain with the heavier rainfall rates that are associated with some thunderstorms each of the following days. As we go into Saturday, Sunday, Monday, and into Tuesday, it obviously is looking like a messy forecast. It is a 40% chance of rain. It's not just one of those 10% sprinkle chances to cover the bases. It's going to be a more widespread rain chance than that. However, I don't want you to go canceling any outdoor plans. Have the rain gear ready to go just in case you need it, or make sure anything that you have planned outdoors, you do have a contingency plan, or you are prepared to kind of put a halt to those plans if you do hear thunder roaring in the distance. That is going to mean that a thunderstorm is pretty close by. That means you are close enough to have lightning strike nearby you, so you want to make sure that you are making plans to go indoors when thunder does roar. It's not just a catchy saying just because it does rhyme. It is something that we always say during this stretch of some summertime weather. But I am just trying to give you all this advice because this is kind of the first consistent stretch of some summer-like weather that we are going to have. Very appropriate that it is happening Memorial Day weekend, but you still have a good likelihood of remaining dry each and every afternoon. So what are you going to be treated to if you don't see anything in the way of rain? Well, it's going to be some near 90-degree high temperatures. It's going to be a pretty warm afternoon. Continue to stay hydrated. Make sure that you're wearing that sunscreen, especially when out and about, maybe by the pool, maybe by the lake this weekend. And we will continue with the daily rain chances as we go all the way into the beginning of next week. And like I mentioned, we just took the long-range models all the way out to next Wednesday. I think this pattern is going to remain in place as we go all the way into the end of the month of May, which is going to be good news. Hopefully, some areas that necessarily aren't catching too much rain over the course of the next few days, they have a good opportunity to try to add to those totals each and every day that does follow. And hopefully by the time that this kind of unsettled and maybe even a slight bit of a wetter pattern is over, we are going to see everyone get something in the way of some beneficial rain, and we are going to wrap up the month of May continuing to be maybe a couple inches above average. It's all going to be dependent on how much rain we get at Middle Georgia Regional Airport, of course. But make sure that you do have those plans to, once again, go indoors when thunder does roar. If it's something in the way of a light shower or maybe just a steady rain, you're not hearing rumbles of thunder, you're good to go. As long as you don't mind getting a little bit wet outside for those outdoor plans, it is going to be fine. You're just going to want to play it by ear. You're just going to want to make sure that you have the rain gear ready to go and that umbrella ready to go. It's what we typically talk about on a summertime day here in Central Georgia. It's hot, it's humid, rain chances are going to pop up in the afternoon, but not a guarantee that you do see rain widespread all across the area. So we'll continue to provide you with updates, but like I mentioned, it's going to be more of the same that I'm reiterating each and every morning. Play it by ear, but make sure that you are keeping those weekend plans. You definitely don't want to go canceling them. And obviously, there's going to be a good likelihood that a majority of your Memorial Day weekend is probably going to be nice and dry and nice and warm. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you once again at 11 a.m. tomorrow to break down what's ahead as we creep closer to that Memorial Day weekend.